The egg in front of me was already cracking, and my hands would not stop shaking. I was not supposed to be this close. Nobody had given me permission, and if Saravan turned her head one more inch and saw me kneeling beside her nest, I did not know what would happen to me. My name is Eli, and on that day I was 11 years old, the only human being for 100 miles in any direction, standing inside the nesting chamber of a creature large enough to swallow me without chewing. The chamber smelled like hot stone and salt. Steam rose from the cracks in the cave floor, where underground heat kept the eggs warm. 6 of them sat in a ring of woven silver grass, each one the size of a large melon, each one glowing faintly from the life moving inside. Saravan lay curled around them like a wall of dark green scales, her long neck arched over the nest, her eyes half closed but never fully closed. She was watching. She was always watching. She hated me. I do not say that lightly. I had felt it in the air, every single day since I arrived at this outpost, in the way her nostrils flared when I walked past, in the low rumble that came from her chest whenever I got too close to the perimeter fence. Her mate had died in the war, the one that started before I was born, the one where human ships had come down out of the sky and burned 3 of her people's cities before anyone understood what was happening. She had not chosen to let me live near her colony. The treaty had chosen for her. I was the price of peace, a small boy handed over as a ward, so that both sides could say they were trying, and every day I lived here, I understood that she was only enduring me, not accepting me. But that morning, something had gone wrong with the 2 guards who usually watched the nesting chamber, and I had wandered too far from my quarters, and now here I was, closer to a Draeth mother and her unborn children than any human had ever been allowed to stand. The first egg split fully open. A small head pushed out, wet and trembling, eyes still sealed shut. Saravan's whole body went rigid. I had read enough about her people to know what was supposed to happen next. In the first few minutes of life, a hatchling's mind is open, soft, unformed, like wet clay. Whatever the mother feels in that moment, the hatchling feels too. It is not a metaphor. Their minds are linked, truly linked, through something the scientists on the outpost called a resonance bond, and in those first minutes, a mother's fear becomes her child's fear forever. If Saravan feared me, her hatchling would fear me the instant it opened its eyes. It would see me as a predator for the rest of its life, the way its mother did. I should have run. I know that now. I knew it then too. But my legs would not move, and some small stubborn part of me did not want to run, because for the first time since I had come to this place, nobody was screaming at me to get away, and I did not want to lose this strange, fragile moment of being close to something being born. The hatchling's eyes opened. Saravan's growl rose in her throat, a sound like rock grinding against rock, and I felt it in my chest more than I heard it with my ears. I froze completely. This was it. This was the moment everything went wrong. The hatchling looked at its mother first, the way instinct told it to. Then it turned its small wet head, and it looked at me. And it did not flinch. It made a soft chirping sound, stumbled out of the broken shell on legs that had never held weight before, and walked straight toward me on unsteady feet, wings still folded wet against its back, and pressed its tiny snout against my knee. I did not breathe. I do not think I breathed for 10 full seconds. Saravan's growl cut off mid-sound, as if someone had reached into her throat and silenced her. Her head snapped down toward her hatchling, then up toward me, then back down again, and I saw something in her huge golden eyes that I had never seen there before. Confusion. Real, total confusion. The second egg cracked. Then the third. One after another, 5 more small heads pushed free of their shells. 5 more sets of eyes opened for the first time, and every single one of them turned toward me instead of their mother. They stumbled across the warm stone floor on legs, still learning how to hold them up, chirping, tumbling over each other, and within a minute, I had 6 newborn dragons piled against my legs and chest, warm and damp, and utterly unafraid, pressing close to me, the way a human baby presses close to the person who makes it feel safe. Saravan made a sound I had never heard from her before. It was not a roar, it was not a growl. It was something smaller, something almost broken, like a question asked out loud by a creature that did not know how to ask questions. I finally found my voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. I did not do anything. I promise, I did not do anything. I do not know why they are like this. She did not attack me. That was the first strange thing. Every instinct in her body should have driven her to snatch her children away from the creature her entire species had learned to fear, but she simply lowered her massive head until it was level with mine, until I could see my own frightened reflection in the black centers of her eyes, and she stared, and she stared, and she stared. I want you to understand what it means for a Draith mind to touch a hatchling's mind in those first minutes. The scientists on the outpost had explained it to me once, back when they still thought I might be useful for something, back before they mostly forgot I existed. A newly hatched Draith cannot yet form real thoughts of its own. Its mind is open like a door with no lock, and whatever the nearest strong mind is feeling floods straight through that open door and settles into the hatchling forever. Normally, that nearest mind is the mother's, because the mother is always right there, curled around the nest, and her fear or her love becomes the hatchling's fear or love before the hatchling ever takes its first real step. But something had happened in that chamber that no one had planned for. In the seconds before the shells cracked, Saravan had not been feeling hatred toward me. She had been feeling something else entirely, something she probably had not let herself feel in years, and her hatchlings had caught it before her hatred could catch up. I did not understand any of that in the moment. In the moment, all I understood was that 6 small dragons were pressed against me, like I was the safest thing in the world, and their enormous, grieving, war-torn mother was staring at me like she had never truly seen me before. Then she did something that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. She lowered her head even further and pressed her snout, very gently, against my shoulder. I did not move. I barely let myself think, in case thinking too loudly might break whatever was happening. A voice entered my mind, low and slow, like something speaking through deep water. I had heard that some of the older Draith could speak this way, mind to mind, but Saravan had never once spoken to me, not with her voice, and certainly not like this. "Why do they run to you?" she asked, and her mental voice held none of the fury I expected. It held only that same broken confusion from before. "I do not know," I told her, as honestly as I knew how. "I have never hurt anything here. I have never wanted to." Her golden eyes narrowed, not with anger this time, but the way eyes narrow when someone is trying very hard to understand something that does not fit inside their old beliefs. I felt her mind brush against mine, careful, testing, like a hand reaching into water to check the temperature before stepping in. I let her. I did not know how to stop her even if I had wanted to, and some part of me, some tired and lonely part of me, wanted her to see everything. I wanted someone, anyone, finally, to understand why I stood outside the mess hall at night and watched the stars, instead of going inside, where the soldiers laughed at jokes I was never included in. I wanted someone to know that I fed the small lizard creatures that lived near the fence every morning before anyone woke up, because watching something eat and grow felt like the only kind thing I was allowed to do. I wanted someone to know that I talked to the hatchling eggs sometimes, quietly, when no one else was around, just to hear my own voice say something gentle instead of something careful and afraid. I think she saw all of it. I think that is exactly what happened, because when her mind pulled back from mine, there were tears standing in her huge golden eyes, tears the size of my fists, and she made no sound at all as they fell. "You have been kind to my kind," she said slowly, "and to yourself, no one has been kind at all." I did not answer, because I was too busy trying not to cry myself, and because 6 small dragons were now falling asleep against my legs, worn out from the effort of being born, and I did not want to move and wake them. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The steam rose from the cave floor, and the hatchlings breathed slow and even, and somewhere far above us the wind moved across the mountain that held this whole colony inside it. I sat there on the warm stone, with a war-torn mother's children asleep against me, and I felt, for the first time since I had arrived at this outpost, something close to peace. Then footsteps echoed down the tunnel behind me, fast and hard, and a voice I recognized called out my name with real panic in it. It was Marcus, one of the older guards, the one who had lost track of me that morning, and behind him came 2 more soldiers with weapons raised and ready, because from where they stood, all they could see was a human child, surrounded by newborn dragons, and a mother the size of a transport vehicle looming over him, with her jaws inches from his head. Saravon's whole body tensed the instant the soldiers appeared, and I felt the shift in her mind like a door slamming shut. This was the danger everyone had warned me about, the reason I was never supposed to be alone with her. And now 3 armed men were standing at the mouth of her nesting chamber, and I understood in one horrible second that everything good that had just happened could collapse in the space of a heartbeat. "Wait!" I shouted, throwing my hands up, standing as carefully as I could without disturbing the sleeping hatchlings still pressed against my legs. "Please, wait! Nobody is in danger. Nobody put down your weapons." Marcus did not lower his rifle. "Eli, get away from her, now, slowly." I could feel Saravon's mind roaring with old grief and old fear, the two feelings tangled together so tightly that I was not sure even she could tell them apart anymore. And I understood that if the soldiers moved one more step forward, if anyone raised a weapon even an inch higher, her instincts would take over completely, and there would be no talking her back from whatever happened next. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I turned my back on the soldiers and faced her instead, and I spoke out loud, so that everyone in that chamber could hear me, human and Dreyeth both. "She did not hurt me," I said, my voice cracking but steady enough to carry. "She would never hurt me. Her children came to me on their own, and she let them, and she has been kind to me, kinder than almost anyone else on this whole outpost. If you hurt her now, you will be proving everything her people already believe about us, and you will be wrong to do it, and I will never forgive any of you for it." Silence answered me, the kind of silence that feels loud, the kind that presses against your ears. Marcus lowered his rifle first. I do not know if it was my words that did it, or the sight of 6 sleeping hatchlings curled peacefully around a human boy's legs, or something in his own tired face that told me he had been hoping for a reason to lower his weapon for a long time. Whatever it was, he lowered it, and the 2 soldiers behind him followed a moment later, slower, less certain, but they followed. And Saravon's mind unclenched, slowly, like a fist opening one finger at a time. I felt her fear settle back down into something smaller, something manageable, and when she spoke again, this time out loud in the low rumbling growl her people used for speech, every soldier in that chamber understood her clearly, because the outpost had given all of them translator implants years ago, for exactly this kind of moment. "He is not like the others," she said, and her huge head bowed low, almost to the ground, in a gesture I had never seen a Dreyeth make toward a human before. He never was. Marcus's face changed slowly, confusion sliding into something softer, something almost like shame. He looked at me, then at the sleeping hatchlings, then back at Saravon, and he did not say anything for a long moment. "I am sorry," he finally said, and I was not sure if he was talking to her, or to me, or to both of us at once. We did not know. "Nobody ever asks," Saravon answered, and there was no anger in it, only tiredness, the deep tiredness of someone who has been afraid for so long that fear has become simply how they carry themselves through the world. Nobody ever asks what a child does when no one is watching. I stood there between them, this 11-year-old boy who had been handed to an outpost as the price of a fragile peace, and I realized that something had shifted in that cave that was bigger than me, bigger than one morning, bigger than one nest of newborn dragons. For years, the humans on this outpost and the Dreyeth in this mountain had circled each other with weapons and walls and careful distance, each side certain the other was waiting for a chance to strike, and none of them had ever once simply sat down together and let their guard fall, not even for a moment. But 6 hatchlings had done exactly that within their first minute of life. Because in that first minute, before anyone taught them who to fear, all they had felt from me was warmth, and all they had felt from their mother, in that single unguarded instant before her hatred caught up with her, was hope. That is what had flooded through the open door of their newborn minds. Not fear, hope. And hope, it turns out, is a much stronger thing to build a life around than fear ever was. The hatchlings began to stir against my legs, small chirps rising as they woke, and one by one, they lifted their heads and looked around at the humans standing at the mouth of the chamber. I felt every soldier in that room tense, waiting to see if the hatchlings would finally show the fear everyone expected. Instead, the smallest one, the last to hatch, untangled itself from the pile, and wobbled on unsteady legs toward Marcus, chirping the whole way, and pressed its small snout against his boot, exactly the way the first hatchling had pressed against my knee. Marcus went very still. Then, slowly, carefully, as if he were handling something made of glass, he knelt down and let the small creature sniff at his outstretched hand. Saravan watched this with her huge golden eyes, and I felt something in her mind that I did not have a word for yet, something between grief and wonder, the feeling of a wall built over many years developing its very first crack of light. I do not know what changed on the outpost after that day, not all at once, not completely. Old wars do not end because of one morning in a cave. There were still soldiers who kept their distance. Still Draeth, who watched every human with narrowed eyes. Still fences and walls and careful rules written by people who remembered the burning cities and could not simply forget them because a boy sat quietly with some newborn dragons. Grief like that does not disappear. I learned that slowly, over years, watching Saravan some nights still stare toward the sky with an old sadness in her eyes that no amount of trust could fully erase. But something had opened that day that had never been opened before, and it did not close again. Saravan began to let me sit near her, then began to seek me out herself, walking to my quarters some evenings, just to rest her huge head near my window while I did my lessons. The hatchlings grew quickly, the way I was told Draeth children always did, and they never once treated me like a stranger, not on the day they hatched and not years later, when their wings grew strong enough to carry them over the mountain peaks. I taught them the names of the stars the way my own mother had once taught me, back before I ever came to this outpost, and they taught me things too, quiet things, the kind of things you can only learn from creatures who decide to trust you before they have any reason to. Marcus became something like a friend after that day, and slowly, a few other soldiers did too, softening in small ways I noticed only when I looked back on months at a time. I do not know if it was my fault or my gift that things changed the way they did. I only know that I never planned any of it. I was simply a lonely boy who had learned, out of necessity, to be gentle with anything that would let me. Because gentleness was the only language I had left, that nobody had taught me to be afraid of using. Years later, when the treaty between our two peoples finally became something real, something signed by leaders on both sides instead of forced onto frightened outposts by desperate politicians, people asked me what I thought had made the difference. They wanted a clever answer, something about strategy or diplomacy or clever words spoken at the right moment. I never had a clever answer for them. All I ever told them was the truth. 6 newborn dragons opened their eyes for the first time in their lives, and instead of learning to fear me, the way the whole galaxy expected them to, they simply walked toward the only kindness in the room and held on. Their mother, who had every reason in the universe to hate me, chose instead to watch, and to wonder, and eventually, to trust. And once trust exists in even one small cave, on one small mountain, it has a way of climbing out into the world whether anyone plans for it or not. That is the whole story. It is not a story about weapons or wars or clever plans. It is a story about a scared boy, a grieving mother, and 6 small creatures who did not know yet what they were supposed to be afraid of, and chose, in the very first seconds of their lives, to run toward warmth instead. I think, if you ask me, that is the only kind of story worth telling at all.